right. Hey, everybody. My guest today is the administrative coordinator for the Gambling Intervention Program at Maryhaven. Please welcome to the modern meeting, Abdullah Mahmood. Welcome, Abdullah.
Thank you, Adam, for having me on.
Of course. This is a long time coming. We met back in Columbus, and yeah, really excited for you to be here. So, obvious first question: what is Maryhaven, and what does it mean to be the administrative coordinator?
Yeah, Maryhaven has been around since 1953. We've had a very comprehensive, all levels of care treatment. We're a addiction treatment center in Columbus, Ohio, probably the most renowned addiction treatment center in Central Ohio, like because we have been around for over 70 years. We not just only treat alcohol, other substance use disorders like nicotine use disorder, substance use disorder, opioid use disorder. But along with that, since 2009, we have been treating gambling disorder even well before the casinos, racinos arrived here in Columbus back in 2011, 2012.
Wow. And how long have you been with Maryhaven?
Been there since 2019, I believe. Yeah, 2019. So it's been about 6 years now. I started out in the opioid treatment program, so I counseled individuals who were on methadone, Suboxone, or medically assisted treatment for opioid use disorder and alcohol use disorder with naltrexone patients. So I was in that program for about 3 years before transitioning to the gambling intervention program. Filling in big shoes, my predecessor, Bruce Jones, he ran that program for a number of years since 2009, and he was with Maryhaven since 2000. So I knew that, it was about time to kind of step into that leadership role, take over the program. And it's just the two of us, it's myself and my counterpart, Jenna Thode. She does a prevention piece, I do the treatment piece.
For gambling.
For gambling specifically, the smallest
Awesome.
department in the building.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that's what I've been hearing from everybody. So tell us a little bit about you. What brought you? Is this something that you knew you always wanted to do, helping people with addiction and gambling specifically? Like, tell us about how you got here.
Yeah, in high school, I had some adverse adolescent experiences with like peers and friends who may have been into substances at the time. And I won't dive into the details of that, but like that kind of had impacted me in some way to get into the field of chemical dependency. I knew I wanted to become a chemical dependency counselor. Went to community college here in Columbus State, at Columbus, Ohio. Eventually got my bachelor's in social work. But during that time, as part of my practicum and internship, I was here at Maryhaven with that community college piece. So got my chemical dependency licensed counselor is what we call it here in the state of Ohio. Eventually moving on to my licensed social worker credential. And then it was about 3.5 years ago, like I had mentioned, Bruce Jones invited me out to a focus group for gambling. Now, the word chemical dependency means dependent on a chemical, right? Like a chemical addiction. So at this point, my schooling, my bachelor's degree, my associate's degree just taught me about chemical dependency. It didn't really talk much about process addictions or gambling disorder. So didn't even know that was in the wheelhouse until I started at Maryhaven. And I knew we had a gambling program, but at the time I kind of brushed it aside and said, okay, that's the gambling guy. He treats gamblers. I don't know much about it. He invited me out to that focus group, and it was actually focused on Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. And I mean, being a Muslim American myself, it kind of resonated with myself that, okay, it's affecting not only all people, but people of my community, people that, I see in my congregation, my worship, my place to worship. So going to that focus group, it was a number of them, about three of them, I saw that affected people who, belong to certain religious denominations of Islam and, of course, see it as a sin. And, in our religion and our culture, we don't talk about these sinful activities, whether it be drug use, alcohol use, or, gambling being a sin as well. So it kind of intrigued me and piqued my interest. And since then, I drank the Kool-Aid and I've been hooked. I mean, I think this is really a very interesting topic. And I feel grateful every single day. I get to serve. I get to serve clients who have lived experience, who come into my office, and they're the experts, not myself. I mean, no amount of text in a book is ever going to give you that lived experience. And I kind of view my treatment through that lens. and see them as being, the expert. And I'm simply just a vessel. I'm a guide for them to find that answer within themselves.
I
So I
love that.
briefly left for some time, for about a year, did some work with Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, returned shortly after, just a year and a half ago, to fill that space and become the coordinator of the gambling intervention program at the time. And since then, I think I've counseled over 60, 70 people for gambling disorder alone.
Amazing. And I love your, it seems like you're coming from a place of humility where, you're not coming in, oh, I have the degree and I know. So, I love what you said that you're a vessel. Um, Talk a little bit about your relationship with gambling and also like what have you done over these last 6 years to educate yourself to be able to, even though you don't have the lived experience, sounds like you do a pretty good job of building that relationship, building that rapport.
Yeah, I mean, the literature is going to touch on that. It will tell you about gambling disorder, forms of gambling, the gambling landscape. I don't bet, I don't gamble myself. More of that family dynamic piece and, my religious upbringing. It teaches us that, okay, it's a sin to gamble, basically because of the notion that it's easy money. And then it's also people exploiting other people for financial gain. And
True.
when we think about it in that lens, it is frowned upon in our culture and my own society.
Hmm.
With that being said, I would say my experience with gambling and educating myself about gambling addiction and gambling disorder comes from sometimes the GA rooms, going out to the landscape itself, whether if it's going out to a racino, casino for some sort of tabling event. I go to GA meetings myself. I just sit there in the back of the room and don't say a word, right? And I just heard from a client today, their Monday meeting that they usually go out to, there was a counselor in that room. And I told him how great that is, that more and more counselors, therapists, and helping professions should go out to a GA meeting sometime during their career and just look at the people and the stories in that room, and they'll have a wealth of knowledge and information to get from those people. Again, nothing about us without us, right? So
Right.
I'll go out there and, that's the best wealth of knowledge I can get from lived experience individuals.
I love that. So you mentioned that Maryhaven's been around since 1953. That's wild. That's so amazing. And have you ever gone back and talked to someone who was there in 2009? Was there anything specific that made them add the gambling, uh, you know, piece, the gambling department, or what made them implement it back then? When I feel like back then, I don't know, 2009. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody knows about gambling disorder now. Nobody really knew about it back in 2009, as far as I know.
Yeah, the landscape has changed drastically since then.
Yeah.
So back in 2009, we applied for a grant through the Columbus Foundation to kind of kickstart gambling disorder treatment. And since then, the landscape has changed a lot drastically. And a part of that decision to do it back in '09, and well before the casinos, the racinos had opened up here in the state of Ohio, was because the Ohio Casino Control Commission was being created back then with the anticipation of, okay, it's going to be up to the people of Ohio to vote on whether or not we want casino racino properties here. So 2011, I believe it was 2011, that legislation had passed. And in 2012, we saw the operation of 11 properties across the state of Ohio. It's still 11 here today. There's 4 casinos and 7 racinos. And racinos are just a fancy way of saying casinos without the table games and other, poker games and stuff like that that would be governed by the Ohio Casino Control Commission. And they also have video lottery terminals, which is basically video lottery terminals, big another fancy word for what essentially looks like a slot machine.
Mm,
It just kind of boils down to who governs what.
mm. Now you mentioned the landscape. I talked to Rob from the Better Institute, and he was saying how from 2019 to the present, they went from having almost zero clients at the Better Institute for Gambling to now it's like 80% of their caseload. Did you see a drastic change the way they did?
Yeah, we've seen a drastic change in people who are sports betting, and not just sports betting, but into slot machines, those video lottery terminals. So, I mean, we know that with increased accessibility, availability, and acceptability of the product, right? Like now, more than ever before, Americans are in support of gambling legislation. It's susceptible to gamble. It's accessible. Back in 2012, you had to drive some miles. Here in Columbus, we had two properties. We still have two properties that you have to drive to. But now the casino, the sports book is in my pockets everywhere. And, we have seen a drastic increase, not just, since then, but in the past 2 years in like younger males, usually between the ages of 18 and 26 who are coming into treatment, who are reporting, harm being done within a year or 2 years of their betting. Yeah, they may have started when they were 16, 17, but legally they've only have bet on the book for about a year or two before they have caused serious financial damage.
Mm. What would you say is the most common form of gambling so like right now or in the last year, how many people estimated do you think that you've treated?
The past year, we have screened well over 1,000 people.
Wow.
So that's largely due to my counterpart in the program, like Janet, our prevention coordinator. We'll go out there in the community. We'll talk with existing groups, existing alcohol drug clients, as well as community stakeholders, talk to their clients about gambling. And as a part of that gambling education, she goes over the screener questions. We use the BBGS and sometimes a Volberg screener. And as a part of that, we screen well over 1,000 individuals.
Okay,
In
so
treatment, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so let's take those 1,000 people. So what would you say is the most common form of gambling that people are coming into treatment for right now?
Yeah, in treatment, we see a fraction of that. Like maybe I see, well, like in a given year between 50 and 70 people. And
Right.
out of that, like active rotation on my caseload, maybe 35 a month.
Okay.
And I will say, in my experience, anecdotally, that is mostly slot machines. And
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Ohio, the casino tax revenue handle and the amount of people playing on slot machines still, over encumber, the amount of people who are betting on sports. I think, that's more universal. When people think about slot machines, we don't think about one gender over the other. It's just language that everybody understands. You touch a button, you press a button, you know how the gaming machine works.
Yeah.
As opposed to sports bettors are more in line with who your typical fanatics of sports, who are usually men, younger men or middle-aged men. So it continues to outpace sports betting in the state of Ohio. Not to minimize sports betting, though, because in the first year of legalization in 2023 in Ohio alone, it was a $7.1 billion being wagered in that year alone.
Yeah.
I think that year we were third in the volume of bets and the amount of wagers. I think first was about New York and second was Pennsylvania that year alone.
What I'm trying to figure out that why is Ohio? I mean, I know you guys got Ohio State, but like, what? That seems really, really high.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's kind of hard to conceptualize $7 billion, but I mean, you could do a lot of change with that, right? A lot of good
Oof.
change.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it was just a mere excitement. People were excited to get into the
Yeah.
action, and especially in the first 3 months of that year, we
Mm-hmm.
had the playoffs, we had college playoffs, we had a Super Bowl, then we had March Madness, and then that year I believe we had the Olympics as well, or maybe it was the following year. But there was sports, on 24/7. So it was a mere excitement, promos, adverts on TV, promotional offers, and they got into a lot of trouble here in Ohio. They couldn't say free bet, they could say like maybe it was a playthrough or that they would have to have a bonus bet. The language or verbiage around free bet just kind of alludes to, okay, you get this money right away into your bank account, which is not the case.
Right. So lately, I've been talking to a lot of people who work in prevention or education. I think you're probably the third person on the modern meeting who works in treatment. Shout out to Paul, episode 2, and I think you know Katrina, episode 47. Um, at Maryhaven, I guess I'm asking about you and Maryhaven, but I guess it's probably the same thing. Where do you guys stand on? This is something that I don't know how I feel, but this stance of neutrality, right? That a lot of these councils and these companies take. They say they're not for gambling, they're not against gambling. Where does Maryhaven and where do you land on that spectrum?
Yeah, as Maryhaven, and I can speak on behalf of the organization and our program, we're also neutral on gambling and legalization and expansion of gambling as well. Neutral because of state councils, and state behavioral health departments usually fund the treatment and prevention that we see here today for gambling disorder. There's no federal funds for gambling, right? Like $0 at all. So it's largely up to the states. Here in Ohio, is about 2% of the sports betting tax revenue, 2% of the casino tax revenue, and 0.5% of the lottery tax revenue that goes over to treatment prevention efforts to the state. Then the state kind of disperses it among 50 county boards. And it's up to those county boards, to see, who gets the money, which agencies qualify for it, and so on. And a part of that goes over to other organizations that have a statewide focus. So
So
without that money, we wouldn't be able to do the treatment prevention work that we do here today.
so real quick, let's go over those percentages again because I want you to say them slowly and so we can see how fucking ridiculous they are. So once again, I'm not putting, I'm putting them on blast, not you. You're just telling me the numbers. What what are the percentages again that go towards treatment in the state of Ohio?
Is 2% of sports betting tax revenue, 2% of casino tax revenue, and 0.5% of lottery tax revenue.
So they can't even give you the one; they give you 0.5%.
Half a
And
percent.
and do you know roughly what that comes out to?
I would say in a given month, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but like let's say about $200 million in tax revenue from casinos and sports betting handles. I would
A
say that's
month?
an estimate. Yeah, about a month. I would say
Two
about yeah,
The
two
state
hundred
of
million.
Ohio, the state of Ohio clears 200 million a month from the casinos
That's a
and the
rough
lottery.
estimate. Yeah, I haven't looked at the numbers, but they're posted. So if you Google Ohio Casino Control Commission, you can look at
Yeah.
the numbers and they're broken down by month to month. If I remember correctly, I may be wrong on this, but I believe with the combined, sports betting tax revenue handle with the casino tax revenue handle is like roughly about $200 million a month. And that might be an average. You see an uptick in the beginning of the year because of sports betting, as well as later on for like football season, NFL, college football, and so on. But you're right, Adam. I mean, not to minimize it, but it is a drop in the bucket, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no federal dollars. It's minimal in the amount of money that we get in opioid funds or opioid treatment funds. That trickles down from federal dollars, from SAMHSA, and we just don't have the infrastructure in place to do it for gambling disorder. But I do believe now that we're going to gain some sort of traction on it now that it's affecting more and more individuals. In Ohio, we do like a sports betting survey as well as a statewide prevalence gambling disorder, survey. And that statewide prevalence survey is done every 5 years. In 2012, they found that about 5% of the state was at risk of developing a gambling problem. 5 years later, in 2017, it was 10%. And recently in 22, just at the dawn of sports betting being legalized here in the state, it was 20%. So 20% of 9 million adults in the state of Ohio, that's a few Ohio stadiums. I mean, that's a few Brown stadiums to kind of fill up, to kind of give you a better idea of how many people that is who are being affected by gambling in a negative manner.
And so I love your optimism, but what makes you think that, you know, there's positive change coming and more what makes you think that?
Yeah, I just spoke to a client about this today, and we're talking about the landscape and how things have changed over time. And to kind of equate it to opioid use, people didn't really start caring about opioid use until it started affecting affluent communities,
So true.
suburban communities who are being affected by the oxycodone, oxycontin market, big pharma pushing out these pills and basically, heroin in a pill at the time. And so it started affecting those suburban communities. And it kind of equated to how sports betting is doing the same thing with like people of a larger or like a higher socioeconomic status, people from affluent communities, people from suburban communities who are being affected by sports betting. And if we think about it in that manner, like, I think it is going to gain traction and more people are going to be affected by this and not just poor people or people in those neighborhoods. I mean, gambling disorder can essentially happen to anybody from all walks of life. I mean, you've seen this, Adam, in your GA meetings, right?
Yeah.
I think now is gaining special traction just because of the demographic makeup sometimes that we see in treatment and prevention.
Listen, I mean, I hope you're right. You're the first person that I've talked to say this, so I hope you're right. And I got to ask, and we can cut this if you know if you can't answer this, but or you can just not answer it. But so if I'm calling a spade, pun intended, it sounds like the only reason, or not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why all of these places, including Maryhaven, take a stance of neutrality is because otherwise you'd have no money. Is that pretty much if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old, kind of what the deal is?
I mean, there's other ways to get money, right? There's always billing insurance. However, to make it at no cost or free to the public, I should have mentioned that part, and
Yeah,
I think that's essential to make it free at no cost to the public, especially we service people who are coming from our county here in Ohio, Franklin County. And when you've been affected by gambling so much, I mean, there's so much financial devastation that people are thinking about their very last dollar, that cup of coffee, that meal in the morning, what have you. So it's a relationship that is essential to have given the current landscape of things to make it at no cost to people who need it at the moment.
yeah,
And I hope that changes in the future, but I'm right with you, Adam. I agree.
yeah, I'm not saying that I think gambling should be illegal. I'm not saying that you know people shouldn't gamble. But what I am saying is that we're taking this stance of neutrality while the operators and the casinos and all of these companies are putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into advertising and marketing, and they're not playing. I don't want to say fair, but it's unethical, it's immoral, and it's not a fair fight right now. Like we're fighting with a blindfold and two hands tied behind our back, and they're just pummeling us with Kevin Hart and John Hamm and Jamie Foxx and free plays, and so I guess what I wish we could start doing is like either they need to be more regulated, right? It's like if Bud Light can't make a commercial with someone drinking alcohol, why are these gambling operators able to, you're seeing people throw the dice. You're seeing on YouTube. Don't get me started with YouTube. I know they say this all the time, but the YouTubers, all this stuff, I just feel like it's really, it's just really, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's just really fucked up. It's just really fucked up that all you amazing people who are out there helping those that are seeking help, you're you're doing it with next to no resources. Like, am I like, are we gonna have to cut this, or is this like, is this like, this is really what it is, right? Like, once again, like, I'm not trying to, you know, I don't want to be at one end of the spectrum or the other. I want a seat at the table. But I want us to, let's have an open and honest conversation. Not me and you, but I'm saying like, the operators and the people that are working in prevention and treatment, we don't we care about people? Don't we care that, like, you talk about a prevalence study, like, if you had to guess, gun to your head, I know that the common stat is 2 to 3% of the country has a gambling disorder. Do you think it's higher now?
Yeah, and it's outdated, right? That number is from this
Totally.
90s. Yeah, 90s or early 2000s. So if I had to guess, between 5 and 10% of the American public.
Right.
But
So we're possibly talking about like 30 million people.
mm-hmm.
That's 10%,
Yeah.
right? That's not enough. That's not enough for us to fucking care more. I
And
mean,
it's kind of hard to do when these prevalence studies are also financially managed and funded by gambling operators or councils in which to get money from gambling operators. I totally agree with you. In the way we kind of think about it, conceptualize it, is like having big pharma fund opioid treatment for Americans that are suffering from opioid use disorder, right? Like you wouldn't have to, if you had a choice in the matter, you wouldn't do it that way. I totally
And
understand.
also, newsflash, not to pick on Ohio, but just because I have the number, newsflash, Ohio, if you cut down on all the advertising and marketing, oh, maybe you only make 170 mil a month, not 200, right? But you might save some people's lives. I don't know. Is that worth it? We always hear lately about young people, young people, young people. At Maryhaven, what is the median age of people that you guys are treating?
Yeah, I just ran the other day the numbers and to look at the demographics as a whole. I would say middle-aged men are usually, people coming in for services as well as aging demographic, and then, that large cohort of young men as well. Not to minimize, the other forms of gambling, but I see plenty of women who come in for slot machine concerns, concerns related to lottery, and other nuanced forms of gambling too. But I would say mostly all around just middle age, aging, as well as a young cohort of men between the ages of 18 and 26.
Mm. And so, I mean, it's obviously good that young demographic is coming in, but in your opinion, and this is something I've asked like almost everybody who's worked in the space, we understand, we get it. It's the hidden addiction. We get it that, you know, some people will go their whole lives not even realizing they have a problem, either because they have a lot of money or they're not spending a lot of money and they just, they do it as a compulsive habit, But why why in your opinion does it seem like it takes people longer to seek help with gambling rather than other substances?
You said it the best. It's a hidden epidemic, right? It's a hidden
Yeah,
disease. I
yeah,
can't test you for ace, cups, and spades on a drug test, right? I
right.
can't see it in your eyes. I can't tell if you're inebriated by gambling. And it makes it so much easier to hide, especially with technology now, with being so e-based. I have e-transactions, debit, credit transactions that happen with paperless statements. I don't even have to have a statement being mailed to my home for the person to kind of hide their addiction. It's so much in deceit, secrecy, that people are just not aware. It takes a very long time for that person to get help because shame, stigma, we go back to the acceptability piece, right? People take the assumption that, okay, you're irresponsible with your money as opposed to actually having an addiction to gambling. And there's a big difference right there. Like, I would argue that most of us are irresponsible with our money. Most of us are financially illiterate. We don't know how to manage our funds. Most Americans don't even have $1,000 in their savings right now. So it's not a matter of just financial literacy or being financially irresponsible. There's far more people out there that are that way. Is I am addicted to a product by design that has been addictive through all these adverts. It's being pushed in my face. I now have a casino sports book in my pocket. It's accessible, it's acceptable, and it's normalized now in today's society to gamble.
Mm, so true. So well said. So what I want to do right now is I want to go into a time machine to 2018, and I want to. We're gonna do like a little. We're gonna do a little experiment or role play, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna walk in, and I'm gonna. Let's say that it was my first appointment with you at Maryhaven, and I just want to kind of give the modern meeting audience kind of a look into how you handle someone who comes in for the first time. You cool with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Okay. All right, so I walk in and hey, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
I've been better. I mean, I think I have a problem with gambling and I know I need to stop, but I really don't want to stop. I wish and I hope I can figure out a way to just do it normally.
What do you like about gambling? I mean, what is it about gambling that attracts you?
I mean, everything. I love. I love the stuff that I get from the gambling. I love traveling. I love staying in hotels. I love yeah, I mean, I guess I get like a certain amount of excitement, a high from it. And I feel like I wouldn't say that I lose. I mean, I definitely lose and I've lost a ton in my life, but I win occasionally. That's the thing about me too. Is like I keep right when I think I'm gonna about to hit my rock bottom, I win. Right? Like I just and that kind of keeps me in the game.
That win that keeps you in the game, how does it compare to your losses over time? Have you looked at your net loss?
God, I mean, at this point, like I'm probably down like hundreds of thousands in my life. I've been gambling since I was like 18 years old.
So, what is it about the wins that keep you going back to it?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I mean, I think I think what it is that I keep telling myself like you're never gonna get to even, but it's two things. Number one, I would rather like I would love to have one big hit and then I would calm down, pay off some debt I have. But then on the flip side of that, it's like, is that really realistic? I would love to just be able to do it in moderation.
Now, Adam, has there been times in your life where you've gotten a hit, like a sizable jackpot or winning, and you had the opportunity to pay down debt or pay back people that you owe, but didn't do so and went back, or the winnings went straight back to gambling?
Um, yes and no. There are times where I have had a big hit and then I owed people I didn't. But then a time recently, I just had a $15,000 craps roll actually a few weeks ago, and I wiped all of my debt. Yet right now, as we sit here, I owe like $3,000 to like five friends. So I'm starting a new list of people that I owe money to, and I told myself when I hit that craps roll that I was going to stop. So that's the other thing too. Like I have these moments where I'm sitting in the casino after a big loss, or I'm sitting in the parking lot, and I tell myself I want to stop, and then I find myself back there like a couple days later.
Have you ever tried like self help groups or GA, AA, NA? Have you ever told anybody about this problem?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm starting to. I mean, people know of it. I don't know if anyone knows the extent of it, besides maybe my parents, who keep bailing me out of situations, and I borrow a ton of money from them all the time. Um, but what was your other question?
Have you tried self help groups or community
Oh,
meetings?
yeah, no. I went to one GA meeting like 8 years ago with my friend, and I ended up playing Keno after the meeting, so it didn't really. I don't know. Like it was cool. They were nice, and I told my story, but I think I only told my story just because I wanted to like tell a cool story. Not it's not a cool story, but it's just kind of my ego, you know. I don't know. But
What do
do you
you
think it's possible? Like, do you think based on the 5 minutes I've been talking to you, like, or in your experience, like, is there a chance that I can do this normally?
Yeah, I can speak for myself and the people that I get to serve and the people who have been through this program. I would say it's a anomaly that, people who try harm reductive techniques, that they're successful in it. I've had patients and clients of mine who have been able to reduce their harm associated with gambling and maybe just gamble every once in a while. But here's the kicker, right? When it comes to your game of choice, your gamble of choice is very hard to do that. And that might be sports betting, that might be the casino, that might be what have you. But when it comes to your vice, when it comes to that game that you'll go back to time and time again, it'll be very hard to kind of kick to the curb and do it so in a controlled manner. Harm reduction works for some, but not all. And again, in my experience, anecdotally, is a anomaly. It's a bridge to maybe eventual sobriety altogether. Because today, I mean, as you sit here in my office, I mean, you can't picture yourself living a whole lifetime without gambling, and that's perfectly okay, right? All you have to do is just picture yourself not going to gamble just for today. And if I can just make that small feat, I know I've accomplished something for today.
I mean, I've done it before. Like uh, I've gone stretches in my life where I didn't gamble, but I always end up going back, and it always ends up at this point where, like, I'm sitting in your office right now, and you're a gambling counselor, and my parents made me come here, but I wanted to come here. I wanted to try to figure this out. Like you know, uh, I'm I'm 35 years old. Like I have nothing. I have no money in the bank. Like I don't. I want more for myself than this. But yeah, like I don't know. I don't. When you say harm reduction, like what do you mean by that exactly?
It's just that, reducing your harm associated with gambling. And I bring that up because it may or may not work, right? But it could be a bridge to, seeing yourself in the future day of time to eventually stop altogether. And what I
Yeah,
mean by that is like taking it, one step at a time, knowing that, okay, maybe it's with this activity that I lose the most amount of money with. This is going to be my downfall. And maybe you can just start with a thought like that. Maybe I could reduce my harm associated with slot machines or sports betting, but maybe I'll try that in a controlled manner for a couple of weeks. And you come back to my office next week and tell me whether or not I'm full of bullshit, right?
yeah,
So it's a self tool, is a self way to kind of measure whether or not you're going to be successful in doing that. But I think you already know the answer for yourself, Adam. It sounds like you have tried that before to some extent. Told yourself, like,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to stop playing craps. I'm just going to sports bet because it gives me an edge. I have some sort of edge in the game. I know the stats, what have you. But in those times, I mean, what has happened to you when you have thought that way to yourself?
yeah. Honestly, I'm not an edge guy. I've never said like, "Ooh, I'm going to play this game because it's an edge." I play the games that I've won at before, and then I'm chasing those wins. And I play the games that are fun to me. Like I love craps because I just love craps. I can't explain why. But and yeah, I mean, you mentioned that it's an anomaly. I don't know if I'm going to be that one person who can do it because I mean, especially now, like my value of the dollar is just completely upside down. Like when I first started gambling, if I lost 200 or 300 at the casino, that was like a bad night. Now it's like if I lose 2 or 3,000, it's like, okay, that was a bad night, but like we'll get it back. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't
If
know.
you woke up tomorrow, right? Okay, let's say you have this path on your left, and that's the atom in which he is going to remain bet free, that he's going to be completely sober from gambling 100%. Then you have this other path to your right. Now, this path, if you continue to go down this path, I mean, it's you gambling and betting as you have been, living in those lies, living in that deceit day after day, hiding from people, having to borrow from people, having to owe people back. Who is that person on the right? Let's start with that path first. I mean, that path to the right, who is that man? Who is that character? I mean, who is that man that presents before you here today?
I mean, first of all, you just gave me the chills. But second of all, yeah, I mean, if I take that right path and I do what I've been doing, or even do it a little less than I've been doing, I'm gonna die alone and I'm gonna have nothing. And there's there's no there's no happy ending to that. I don't think, or even a decent ending.
Die alone because I have burnt bridges. I have ruined
Yeah,
friendships. I have ruined relationships, family
yeah,
fallout.
yeah. And I think the path on the left is it's obviously the path I should take, but I cannot right now as we sit here. The idea of never betting again on anything that just seems insane to me. Like I got to do something
But there's
or
a
do
part
it.
of you that wants to do something about your betting.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to be where I am right now, financially, professionally.
What about your parents? If it wasn't for your parents, would you be sitting here today?
Oh, I'd be homeless if it wasn't for them. Yeah.
I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, what do you make of their financial bailouts or them bailing you out time and time again?
Yeah, I mean, I love them for it. I mean, but I also know I keep putting myself in these spots knowing that I have that safety net. But I know eventually, especially this last time, like I know eventually they're going to say no, you know? But and scene. Holy cow, are we good actors?
Yeah,
Oh
that was
man.
awesome. That was amazing.
Dude, that was great. I hope
Give me
everyone enjoyed
chills.
that. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. I mean, and I was that was me. That was me 2018. Like I cuz so fun fact, I went to a counselor. Had
Hmm.
nothing to do with gambling. I went to a psychologist in like 2016, and he did not give me good advice. Like now that as you were talking, it reminded me of him a little bit in the sense that he was trying to he basically told me like if you starve the addiction enough and then try to build it back up, you might be able to do that. But instead of doing what you're doing, which is like the motivational interviewing and the open-ended questions, he was kind of just telling me that's what I should do, right? So fascinating. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I love amazing job, Abdullah. Not to I'm getting all excited for this, but it's I mean, that's amazing. I think that anyone who goes to you at Maryhaven, they must walk out of there feeling good. So that's amazing.
And that's
Um,
exactly what happens, Adam. Like I would say, just regarding that really quick,
yeah,
that people come in not knowing what even tomorrow is going to look like.
right.
And I always give the example, you and I don't even know what we're going to eat for breakfast tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
And people can't fathom the idea of living without gambling for the rest of their days and rest of their life. And that's exactly it. I mean, you talked about it, just that motivational enhancement and motivational interviewing and open ended questions can just go a long way because what it does, it gives the power over to you, right?
yeah,
It gives you the choice whether or not what to do regarding your gambling and betting while still, if you had noticed, I'm still talking about consequences. I'm still talking about, okay, what had happened during this or that, trying to kind of have you conceptualize all those consequences that had happened as a result of my betting. To try to get the client to understand, okay, there has been a lot of cost benefit. There's a lot of positives to gambling. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here, right? The dopamine rush, the neural pathways that have been affected by addiction, as well as challenging those behaviors and challenging, okay, what would that life look like
for
if
sure.
there is a sober self or sober version of myself? Who is that man, or who does he look like? You.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. That gave me the chills when you did that. Okay. All right. So now you get to the point in the session where through your open-ended questions and through your guidance, they have they have opened up. They've told you how they feel. They've told you how gambling makes them feel. They told you how they've affected everyone. So I'm sure it doesn't happen every session, but in the session where at the end of that person says to you like, "Okay, you got me. I now have a problem. Now what? What do I do now? Like I love talking to you, but like, is there something else I can do? What do you say to that person?"
Resources. And I always tell people that an hour of your time, our gambling programs on an outpatient basis, outpatient being maybe 1 or 2 hours a week. And I always say that an hour of your time is so minuscule in the whole grand scheme of things that you're going to be there and it's going to fly by just like that. So it's equipping them with the tools, coping skills, relapse prevention that they can use for the 167 hours that they have in a week, right? 168, 1 hour of them being in counseling. And of course, all that could be for nothing, right? If they don't really actively listen and see, what can I get from this meeting with this counselor, then they will leave and it will go right back into betting and gambling again and be stuck in that cycle day in and day out.
Yeah,
What I push for is like as many resources as we can. In addition to those coping skills, relapse prevention, talk about the importance of connection, right? Talk about the importance of Gamblers Anonymous. Talk about the importance of just building connection. It doesn't even have to be GA. It could be another self-help meeting, Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, because those meetings, are available 24/7 online. And we also have 6 meetings throughout the week here in Columbus as well. In fact, we were just talking about this before we hit record. A client of mine just mentioned a modern meeting to me today. We're talking about how we're going to be taping this at 7 p.m. tonight. And he was like, oh, a whole bunch of guys at GA are listening to it right now.
that's
And
amazing.
in fact, 2 weeks ago, a newer client of mine had came in for his first session. And what I start off with like light conversation and kind of just talk about how their day is going and their commute over to Maryhaven and he was telling me about this podcast he was listening to in the car of this woman and her story with gambling addiction. It was actually, the episode you did with Linda. And I was like, what pod was it? What podcast was it? He was like, oh, it's a modern meeting. So
My
you're getting a lot
God.
of traction here in Columbus with the amount of people who are listening to this podcast in the rooms and even outside the rooms as well.
Thank you, Ohio. That's awesome. Thank you for telling me that, Abdullah. That's amazing. Um, so two more questions. First question, going back to, when we talked about the hidden addiction, and I asked you, why does it seem like those struggling with gambling, it takes longer for them to seek help? So, would you say that it's fair to say then the majority of people that struggle with addiction or substance abuse, would you say that someone else in their life noticing it is usually like a common catalyst to get them to initially seek treatment?
I would say it's a large catalyst for a lot of my clients, especially my male clients who come in for treatment. And I mean, I was just talking about this today. They don't come in until after the fact. It's usually because a statement was found, or their spouse partner found out about the amount of money that was being wagered on sports betting or slot machines or what have you. So that being a catalyst for a lot of the male clients I see. I would say for the other half, for the women I see, it's more or less them kind of coming in by themselves, but that could also be a catalyst. I mean, their husbands or spouses or partners can also find out about their gambling. That moment in which you see shit hitting the fan and you don't know what to do, and you see your marriage kind of crumbling apart or your relationship crumbling apart. It doesn't even have to be a partnership or a relationship. It could be your family, your children, your caregivers, and whatnot. I think that kind of drives the motivation in people to get some sort of help, whether if it's calling the helpline here in Ohio, getting connected, or Googling, gambling help, or just making that call for help at Maryhaven. And, they might not want to be there at the first session, just like yourself. Like we just went through that role play exercise. They might have a lot of ambivalence, but they also have motivators to get better. They may not want to work on their betting gambling, but they want to work on their marriage. And that's
Yeah.
a starting point.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because it's like, yeah, like obviously, the majority of people who hit that rock bottom, or, you know, they are then forced to go to AA or NA or seek help because someone's making them. Now, we always talk about how if someone's making you, it's a high rate of relapse, but yeah, that makes total sense because we can just gamble way longer without anyone noticing. It makes total sense. Yeah.
But the
My last
motivation starts to change over time, though, like after a couple of sessions or after a couple of GA meetings,
Oh, for
the
sure.
traction
Yeah.
builds for sure.
Yeah. So my last question. This has been amazing. It's the same question I will ask everyone who works in the space. If you're a modern meeting listener, you probably know what I'm about to ask. I would say so far the best answer that anyone gave me. Everyone's given me great answers, but Jody Neely from the Mass Council, she gave a pretty solid answer. And this is a question that is coming from a compulsive gambler in recovery. And I know that I asked my psychologist that question. I've asked people early in recovery this question. In your opinion, understanding it's a case by case basis, but in your opinion, in your experience, what do you think is, if you had to pick one pathway for everyone, a combination of whatever, what have you seen is the most successful pathway for someone who is trying to stay away from a bet?
I would say for the general public, prevention is the best form of treatment. Preventing gambling harm from even happening in the first place, educating people about safer betting practices if they are betting already, and educating them now, okay, gambling disorder and gambling addiction is a really real phenomenon that happens to people, that is just not, in the movies or TV shows or whatnot, that is actually happening to the general public. So education, prevention being the best form of treatment to put myself out of business, right? So that this
Right.
issue is not here to begin with. But in treatment, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah.
What is truly effective for people. I will say gambling disorder has a highest turnover rate than any other addiction alone. It also has a highest, this convergence with suicidal attempts and ideation than any other addiction alone. So taking that into consideration, my primary goal, and if I had a successful day with the majority of my clients, is just keeping them safe.
Yeah.
Keeping them safe from gambling harm, keeping them safe from mental health concerns, suicidal ideation, and financial harm. I mean, that's taking a holistic approach to things. We also have group counseling available on a weekly basis at 5 p.m. on Mondays. In addition to those four caveats, like having that connection be available to people, whether if it's in group therapy with myself or in a GA meeting or whatever self help meeting, the more things that people are involved in, the more successful outcome they're going to have regarding their betting. Then I also have people who don't show up for the second appointment too. And that's perfectly fine and okay because at the first session, the first appointment, I try to shell out as many resources as I can. Because even if one of them sticks, even if it's a podcast, even if they listen to an hour of a podcast, it still planted that seed for the future self to get better, right? They might see themselves, as changing in the future, but they might not be ready for it in the here and now.
Yeah. Amazing. Abdullah, where can people find you in Maryhaven?
You can go to maryhaven.com/gambling to learn more about our gambling intervention services, or you can go to maryhaven.com as a whole to look at our other services. If you live in Ohio, you can call the gambling helpline number at 1-800-589-9966. Or if you want to get connected right to Maryhaven's gambling department, call 614-324-5425 today.
Abdullah, this was amazing. Really appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing you at, definitely, I'm sure you'll be at NCPG in Nashville, right? You'll be there.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely see you around. We'll definitely have you back on the Modern Meeting. Might need to do some more role play with some other people, or maybe even a real live one. I don't know.
There
Who
you go.
knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? This won't be the last that the Modern Meeting sees of Abdullah for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam.
All righty,
Thanks.
we'll be right back.